Karen Constantine, you belong, don't you, to a year-round wild swimming group, which sounds marvellous.
Yes.
I assume your members feel pretty strongly about the issue of sewage being leaked into the sea.
Totally. I belong to a group called the Ramsgate Mermads, because we are mad because we swim through the winter. But we started this during lockdown and we found it so incredibly good for our health and our mental health that we've just continued. And when we can't swim because there's a pollution warning, I mean, we get quite down about it. But obviously, we're not just concerned about our swimming, we're concerned about all the other water users and the ecology as well.
What about the government's new promise? Because we can get into the niceties of this legislation in a moment and what's been happening in the Commons with NUS. But the government has made a new pledge to reduce the number of times that sewage is released, and there are other pledges around alerts so that water companies have to make an alert very quickly. Is all of this enough to satisfy you?
It's too little too late, isn't it? I mean, 30 years ago we were told, you know, that we needed to privatise the water companies because the Victorian architecture was crumbling then. It's crumbling now. So we need the government and the water companies to go much further. We need to see a capital investment and we need to see that water infrastructure rebuilt. We need to see, I think, frankly, we need to see renationalisation and stop putting money into shareholders' pockets and put it back into the system where it rightly belongs.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's not.
I mean, there's an ideological point, but let's look at the figures for a moment. Between 2009 and 2019, England's water companies paid out £13 billion to shareholders. These are figures from Greenwich University and The Guardian. I mean, even that, it sounds like a lot of money, obviously, but that is far short of even the very lowest estimate of what it would cost to completely end these sewage overflows.
Well, we wouldn't expect any of that work to be done overnight. And other estimates say that in the past 30 years, the profit to shareholders has been in the region of 57 billion. So there are differences of opinion on that particular point, but we're not going to solve this issue unless we invest in that infrastructure. And that's what we need to do. And the sooner that starts, the better off it's going to be, because it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And it's not just, you know, leisure users that are at risk. You know, you're talking about Lake Windermere becoming ecologically dead. I mean, this is a serious issue. It's already impacted the Oyster Bay company in Whitstable, oysters, sea life, fish, etc. It's just not good enough. We need to do better than this.
Karen, there's an argument here, a sensible one, isn't there, that the government is doing this the right way. It's investigating the cost, looking at how quickly, who should pay for it, and then deciding whether to go ahead. Isn't that quite logical, Karen?
It is, but there was a bit of political chicanery that went on with those estimates of £600 billion to fix the system. I mean, they've been proven to be wrong. I mean, what we're looking at here, Junior, is a problem where 400,000 times raw sewage was discharged into our seas and rivers in 2020. Something like 3.1 million hours worth of raw sewage just pumped into our, you know, into our precious water course. It's just not good enough. It's okay to say there are measures in place, but it's also, I think, very okay to say this has been an absolute failure of privatisation. These water companies have made vast profits, £57 billion over 30 years. That now needs to end, and that money needs to be invested into the infrastructure.
Yeah. OK, and we've addressed that amount over either 30 years or 10 years and reflected on the fact that it's still not enough. Now, you're quoting that 600 billion, and you're in good company because Water UK says that they don't think that that is a reliable figure. Are you able to, is anybody able, Karen, to put a figure on what it's going to cost or what it should cost to sort this out once and for all?
I would think that's the job of the water companies to do that. I mean, if we look at what's happening, we know that we've got hotspots up and down and around the coast. So we know where the worst, most polluting places are. And I would say the water company needs to prioritise those. But I think that the essential point here is to stop the money going to shareholders. Some of those shareholders are in far-flung countries.
We're very lucky to have here great representation across the board with the three of you. We've got, you know, the care sector itself represented by Jane. We've got Westminster politics, and we've got local politics represented by Karen. Karen, if you were in power, which clearly you would like to be, at Kent County Council, what would you do differently there to tackle this recruitment problem?
I think pay is a key issue, and I can see that, you know, if we raise this to £11 14. In some places that would work. However, in other places that wouldn't be enough to attract people in. I think what we need to get into here is a war for talent. We need talented people to step forward and step up to do caring for people that need care, whether they're elderly or dementia patients or whatever. I mean, Sajid Javid this morning said that by the end of this decade, we would need something in the region of 600,000 more workers, and we've got a shortage of 120,000 now. So we need to take urgent action. And I think pay and adequate training, support, etc., is going to be one way forward. But when residents contact me, this is one of the most painful things that people are having to deal with, one of the most painful and confusing things. And for people of my generation that perhaps got an elderly parent, they don't understand how fragmented, how disjointed, and how little support there is for them and their parents or people they're caring for when that time comes.
And it always comes in a crisis, doesn't it? It never comes with a lot of warning. Look, in the small amount of time we've got left to talk about care staff, I do want to raise from November the 11th, care home workers will have to be double jabbed unless they have a medical exemption. The government's also considering extending this to home care staff as well, isn't it? Is this the right moment to be turfing out unjabbed workers when we are heading into this, what sounds like a winter crisis in care?
No. As has been outlined, we've got about 1.4 million more people that are going to step forward needing care. They've been hidden during the COVID period. I mean, in a way, I think this is a sort of failure of public health in general, that we've got so many people that are frightened of going to get a jab. And I think we really need to do a deep dive very quickly into what it is exactly that's holding people back. And we need to allay those fears. We don't want to force people to get a jab, but we do want to win hearts and minds, if you like. You know, I'm pro jab. I mean, you know, it's not a difficult thing to do. But we certainly can't go through the winter with a social care crisis of a staff shortage of 240,000 people, which is what it looks like if we force this through.
Finally and briefly, this week, is it right to reward children for turning up to school every day? Langley Park Primary in Maidstone has had to scrap its plans for a Halloween party for those with attendance above 96% after a backlash from parents. They said it wasn't fair on those who remained at home during the peak of the pandemic. But should children ever be penalised for missing school when they're ill? We've got a couple of minutes on this one. As a parent, this is a challenging one, this one. I mean, Karen, it's so obvious, isn't it, that children need to be in school. Attendance is important. But let's look at the specifics here. In the middle of a global pandemic, was this school doing the right thing?
Well, I think all children should be rewarded in a way that means something to them. And skilled teachers and skilled teaching staff can work out how best to do that. But I'm a great believer in inclusivity. I don't really believe in dividing children up into children that have done particularly well or particularly bad. And there will be really rock solid reasons why some children haven't been to school. And speaking as a parent who had a child that was school phobic, it can be incredibly difficult for parents to jolly their children along into school if they're completely unwilling. And that's a long-term objective that you have to work with your child in the school to overcome those difficulties. But after COVID, during this situation, no, I think it's quite wrong.
Okay.